Aloha and welcome back, Hawaii ACTE. Happy holidays. Thank you so much for joining me again. Today, we're joined by Emma Davis from Waianae High School, here to dive deeper into part two of our video notebook series. Have you ever heard the word engaging? Engagement. Make your lessons more engaging. Well, there's nothing more engaging than the use of manipulatives. Let's see how Emma does it as she incorporates manipulatives into Google Slides in this next series of virtual notebooks. I hope you're ready because it starts in three, two, one.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma Davis. I'm going to be doing part two of the virtual notebooks PD that my friend Kaylee started. I'm also a science teacher here at Waianae High School. I teach our upper grades, so 11th and 12th graders, human physiology and forensic science. So I know Kaylee shared the basics of the virtual notebook, what it is, some of the benefits and why we use it. And then she gave a list of manipulatives and different ways that we found it useful. And today I'm going to go over a couple tips that we found in creating manipulatives and how to make it a little bit easier so that kids won't kind of mess with things that aren't supposed to move, so that they can really focus on the actual content and the purpose of what the virtual notebook is supposed to help them learn. There's a link to these demo slides right here. I made a shortened URL code for it. So if you want to type that in, you'll have access to that. It'll just ask you to make a copy. But so that you guys have something to start with, or a couple examples on how I've made some of these manipulatives for my class. So this is a slide that I use in my human physiology class to help them kind of practice with the circulation of blood. It's a draggable. So one of the activities that I do in my class is actually a manipulative where it has all of the same term and they put it in order based on where the blood flows through. So I tried to take this that I do in my class in person and turn it into a virtual notebook activity. It's just to put it in order. So what the kids will be able to do is they can click on these boxes and drag them. So from the aorta, it would go to the systemic capillaries. And then this is also a feature that I use, and you'll see that these are actually stacked, so they can use the exact same draggable multiple times. So this is oxygenated blood, and they would fill this in as they go along as well. So a couple different things that they can do on this slide, but practicing the exact same thing, I would have them be practicing in class. I also used to be a math teacher, so I'm trying to give you different ideas on how you might implement this in your own content area. But this is key features of quadratics. So x-intercept, these, they can actually drag and place them on the graph. And I should highlight too, this zoom button is really, really helpful. It'll really help your kids if they're doing virtual notebooks because they can manipulate it a little bit more accurately. And then this would just have them, type in the factored form, which would be -4. So they can fill that out as well. I like to have anything that my kids need to do something for, to put it in yellow. That's kind of my signal to them that you need to type something here, or this is something you should drag or manipulate. And it makes it a little bit more clear for them. I know some people do foldables. This was a kind of a complicated version of that. So if you're into foldables, I created a slidable, so it's something that's possible, and they just slide it open, and this was for vocabulary, and obviously underneath it doesn't have to be that complex, but there's ways to do pretty much anything that you would have done in an interactive notebook, you can create in a virtual notebook. Here's an example of that column sort. So this is for types of evidence, and having them sort different examples into what qualifies as class evidence and what qualifies as individual evidence. This is an example of a brainstorming slide that I created. I use these if I want to have kids brainstorm on their own, and then what they actually do is they'll take their sticky notes and they can just copy and paste these over into a set of master slides that maybe the whole class is editing together. So it allows them to brainstorm on their own and then collaborate together as a class. This is a manipulative that my friend Lacey created. She teaches biology as well. And so this was the different reactants that go into photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So again, it's a draggable. So everything is locked in the background, and all the kids have to do is drag them into the appropriate locations. So it really just gives them individual practice. They kind of figure it out pretty quickly. And a couple other examples, there's a diagram one. And I don't want to bore you guys with this because I'm going to go through it in a little more detail, but how do you actually create these? So there's a couple different steps that are super important. So the first one we're going to go over is that column sort. So I'm kind of going to go over any column sort. If you want to build a column sort, 2 column, 3 column, whatever you want. You can see right now I have this table and it's not locked in, right? So you could actually move this around. And we want to avoid the kids being able to do that because we only want them to be able to manipulate the things we want them to. So Kaylee showed this in the first video as well, but I just want to make sure I go over it because it's a little bit more complicated. So the easiest way to make this into a master slide so that it locks onto the background and that the students can't manipulate it is to highlight it and then use the cut feature, or you can just copy if you don't want to delete it, but you can see that that clears the whole page. You would go into the slides, edit master, and then I always just scroll down to the very bottom, create a new page, delete anything that's already there because you want it to be a clean page, and then press Control Paste. And then you can see that that'll be in there. You can always come back and edit this if you want to change something. If you want to add directions in your master slide, you can do all of that in the master slides feature so that they still won't be able to move it around. So if you close out of that now, what you can end up doing is then on this slide, you can go to layout and choose the layout that you created. So that would be right here. And then as you can see, it's locked in. So the students won't be able to move it. So when you add in your word bank, they'll only be able to move those things. So anytime you're creating a slide with manipulatives, always set the background first and then add your manipulatives or the things that you actually want kids to be able to interact with on top. So as you can see, I've done that, specified a little bit more. Again, if you anytime you want to go back in and change the layout, you can just go into master slides, edit master. Just wanted to show you guys. So I already had the one for types of evidence, but you could edit it right in the master slides. So don't worry about once you set master slides not being able to change stuff. You just want to change it in the master slides. And then what you're going to do, and again, I kind of mentioned that I like to make the manipulatives for my kids yellow. So I would first make a text box and format everything about this one box to how I would like it. So I'm going to do everything here, and I'm just going to say blood. And then I can even bold that. And then I'm going to add a fill color to my box and make sure that I have a border I like. Makes it a little bit clearer. I can even up this a little bit. There we go. So that's what I want all my draggables to look like. And then once I format one of them, the easiest thing to do is just to duplicate it, either through edit, duplicate, or Control D. And then you can just type the next one, so fingerprints. And you would just keep doing that until you have all of the manipulatives you want for the categories that you're sorting into. And then the final step would be, you can see them all here. And then this is what the kids would do. Blood type is class evidence. Fingerprints are individual evidence. Car paint is class evidence. So students can kind of go through, and then you can very easily see if they're kind of understanding the content or not. So that's a really easy way to do a draggable. Again, the draggable idea carries over into a lot of different things. They're all built on the same principle of, this is technically a draggable or a column sort. They use the same idea, lock in the background, and then you're dragging the manipulative. Same thing with this, right? You lock in the background and then you're just dragging what's on top. So all of these manipulatives are kind of similar, but creating the background and then putting whatever manipulatives on top can be really utilized in a lot of different ways. So that's probably the most useful one. The next one that I prepared for you guys is stacking draggables. So this is a really cool feature. I'm going to kind of do a more elementary example in building numbers with base 10 cubes. I know this is more of a kindergarten thing, so even though the kids might not be able to do this, or maybe they're not using a notebook, even teachers can use this as a way to interact with their kids, and they're doing the actual dragging, but the kids, it's a little bit more engaging. So depending on how competent your kids are with technology, there's a lot of different ways that you can still use these virtual notebook ideas. So the way that you would do this, again, these are not locked into place. So the first thing I would do is build my background. Anything that I don't want to move, that's what I'm going to put on the page first. And again, once I do that, I'm going to highlight it, right, copy it, and edit master. I've already added it into my master to kind of speed things along, but same idea. You just make a new page, paste in the exact same page that you built. You can even build them in master slides if you'd like to, but I like to build it on the slide first and then add it in. Either way really works. And then again, you can kind of see I have it already made here. So here's stacking draggables, right? Again, these are movable, but once I lock it into my master slides and use the layout like this, you can see that I can no longer drag them. So all locked in. Sorry, I added a box too later on, but it ended up in the layout. But so basically then you can add pictures or text boxes, whatever you want. I'm going to use pictures in this case. Go and find base 10 blocks here. So right here I have, this is thousands, but at this level, I only want hundreds, tens, and ones. So I would just save this image. Because what we're going to do is we're actually going to remove all the white space to make it easier so they're more isolated. So I'm going to call this base 10 blocks. And then I'm going to use this website called remove.bg. And basically what this is, remove background. So it's going to remove the background of the image for us. And that makes it so I can actually separate them and there's none of that white background that kind of blocks things and won't get in the way. So I'm going to choose my base 10 blocks, open that. And you can see it kind of took out all the white space, so now it's just the blocks. Then I'm going to download that without the background. It's going to automatically download for me. And then when I go back into my notebook, I'm going to insert an image, upload it from my computer, and I'm going to pick from my downloads this base 10 block. And the easiest thing to do is just to crop this so that you can use it again. So again, same picture. And as long as your kids don't really know to like double click on images, you don't really need to separate them. It's fine to crop it. But if you wanted to, you could crop it beforehand and then put them in as individual pictures. So here's my 100 blocks, and I'm going to move this right here. And I'll show you why in a minute. And I'm just going to duplicate that. I'm going to zoom in for this so you guys can kind of get a better picture of what I'm doing. Sorry, I'm totally talking to myself too. But now I can just slide this over. And I can make it the proper size for this block of 10. So that's all I want there. Duplicate it again, and then the last one will be the ones cube. Just gonna, again, move this over. It doesn't have to be quite perfect either, because you just want it close enough that it's not going to interfere with clicking on the other ones. So it would look just like that. So now that I have them all here, I want them to kind of fit in this box, or you can make your box after. Mine was just kind of already set. So I'm just going to shrink them a little bit so they all fit in this box. And now I have my cubes. So here's the thing with stacking them is that basically I want them to be able to use these multiple times. because obviously they're going to need 2 of these to make 200. So the easiest way to do this, and it's actually really cool, but you just select them all. So drag across the ones that you want to select. And when I duplicate them, I'm just going to drag it right back on top of, and it should give you the little lines to make sure that you're right on target. But basically that hides all your extras. So if you do this a bunch of times, they should stack right on top of each other. And you just keep doing that for as many as you think that they'll need. Just going to do this one more time because I already have it prepped for you guys. So you can see that they stack right on top of each other. You can't even tell that there are multiples, but when I drag one off of there will be another one in its place, so they can use it multiple times. So this is really helpful if you want them to, again, use something more than once. It was in that the original graphing one as well. I made dots so that they could label key features. Those were all stacked on top of each other too. And so basically what this ends up looking like is, if they do it right, which again, once they get used to it, they get pretty good at dragging stuff, they can drag them and they can show you that they understand the concept of hundreds, tens, and ones places. And then again, you can just check to make sure that they did it, kind of as if you would in a regular class and they were to cut and paste something, or they were to draw it or select it. A couple different options, and I'll try and speed through these a little bit more quickly. Here's a matching one. Again, these ones are not locked into place, so the first thing I would do is make everything for the background that I want to be there first. I didn't complete it, but once I have it all set, I would highlight that, add it to my master slides, and this is the result I would get, so that they couldn't drag any of these accidentally. So once they're all locked in, you'll have to show the kids the line tool for this one, but again, once they learn it once, they kind of stick with it. I'm going to zoom in here. But basically what they do is they take the line drawing tool. So simile, I'm going to look for the definition. It's comparing two things using like or as. So I can just draw a line right from that one to here, right? And again, then I could draw another line, click on the line tool. Personification would be to describe using non-human things using human qualities. And that's actually the example that I have. So then they would connect this to this. So this is a little bit more complex one. Obviously, you can do it with just a regular 2-column. Sometimes the 3-column gives them like, okay, now I have to really think about where it's going. You can add in examples. Same as a worksheet would be in a regular classroom. I think the next one I did was a diagramming one. Super, super helpful in science. But even in English, again, diagramming, you know, the storyline or filling in those options. You can usually make these either as a draggable, which is, again, same idea, lock in the background. And again, I use that same, oh, I didn't mean to move that. Control Z is going to be your best friend and your student's best friend. I use the same remove background so to make sure that I didn't have all the white space that would kind of block anything else I wanted to type in. But the first thing I would do, again, this is what I don't want to move. So I would block, put that into my master slides so that they can't manipulate it. And then if you wanted to, again, the reason I didn't do a draggable is because there's not a ton of room here, but super easy to also do a type in so that the kids have to actually know the names and label them. And I would format it however I want. Again, I usually make sure that they know exactly what I want them to do, and I'm going to format this first one exactly how I want it. So type here. And normally if they're typing, I'm just going to highlight the letters so that they can see it. And I'm not going to put a border around this one because they already kind of have borders. Once I have it exactly how I want it, the only thing I have to do is just duplicate it. So I can duplicate it and drag it to the next box. This makes it really easy so that the kids can just click on it, type in the name of that bone, and then move on to the next one. So you can kind of go through. So it would look like at the end is right here. And if I were a kid, I'll zoom in again. Right, so again, the kids using the zoom tool is super, super helpful. Zoom and the control command Z, the undo button, are guarantee your best friends. Right, so this is the skull, or depending on how detailed you're gonna get. Right, and then they just type in mandible. This is looking more complicated than it really is. Okay, but basically you can make a worksheet there where they have to diagram, or they can read off a diagram and fill into their own notes. So super, super helpful tool, especially at the high school level or at any level if you just want them to be labeling things. Again, like I said, you can also make it into a draggable. So there's just a couple examples. I don't want to be exhaustive about it, but really the best way I can put it is that any manipulative or activity that you're using in your classroom or you would have had them do in an in-person interactive notebook is really possible using virtual notebook. And email me if you're wondering how you could potentially create something. I'll leave my email on the last page. It might just take some thinking, I guess. But I found a way to do most of the activities that I normally would have done in person, and the kids actually really enjoy it, or they get the same thing out of it. The last thing I wanted to show you guys is something that isn't necessarily a virtual notebook, but once I started using virtual notebook, I realized I could use some of the same ideas for whole class presentations or whole class activities. So this is one example. If any of you guys do Four Corners because our students aren't physically in class, I just kind of, I didn't use my students' names, but I've done this before, or philosophical chairs, we have two sides. But basically, you can just type in your students' names and save this as a master copy and write in all their names so you can reuse it and you can change what the slide looks like. But basically, you can't see it on the slide, but once kids click on this, you could actually share this with your whole class. Again, they can't edit the background because if you create a master slide, it'll make it easier. But what they can do is they can select their own name and you can give them a statement or give them something to think about, and they can move their own personal name under whichever category they agree. And then they can have a conversation or they can debate back and forth why they think that one is the correct one. So if any of you are using, Avid strategies, philosophical chairs, things like that, there's really a lot of ways that you can use these same kind of virtual notebook tips and tricks to create some of these interactive activities for your student, even though they're all completely virtual, so that they can kind of see it and conceptualize it that way. Yeah, so it's really great for whole group work as well as the individual. And kind of like I mentioned before, they can do individual slides and they can always copy and paste those into a presentation so they can comment on each other's work, or they can do whole group things and then copy and paste that work into their personal notebook or their personal notes so that they can review it later. So there's a lot of crossover between just kind of the ability to really easily share work and then collaborate and record work in their virtual notebooks too. So back to the original demo slides. Here it is again. If you have any questions or you would like help brainstorming any activities or ideas that maybe you used in class and you're wondering if there's a way that you can turn it into a virtual notebook activity, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help. Or Kaylee, or our friend Lacey does virtual notebooks too. So there's a lot of people here. So reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you guys kind of implement it if this is something that you're looking to do. So there's my email. I'm sure Kaylee listed her email and then the link to the demo slides if you want to have access to those. So that's all I have. Kaylee will be doing part 3 of this series, which kind of troubleshoots some of the issues that we've run into. And I know one of the big things about virtual notebooks is that it seems like there's a lot of front loading. But luckily we've found an add-on to Google Slides that allows you to kind of give them new slides day by day if you're uploading it to Google Classroom. So she'll go over that. It's made it really easy to maybe just make a few slides a day so you don't have to plan the whole week out in advance. And it's made my life really easy. So she's going to go over that and a couple other problem-solving tricks that we found really helpful. Please reach out if you need anything. But otherwise, thank you so much.